so glad that we're talking about 2025. I love Christmas, and I even like the bit between Christmas and New Year. But I find New Year's Eve so stressful with the whole sense of anticipation and New Year's resolutions and all that kind of stuff, that once we get into 2025 and our minds are thinking ahead, I am so much happier.
My favourite bit about 2025 is that it is the first square number year of our lives since 1936. So it's 45 squared.
That's so unexpected.
I love square numbers, and this might be the last one that, unless sort of like cryogenics comes around, this was the last square number year.
So what would the next square number year be, Alex? Now you've introduced pure maths into
46
a theatre
squared?
podcast.
Readers will have been there before. 2116.
Oh, yes.
So why off?
Well,
theatre might not exist by then.
Yeah, it's even longer than Man United winning a Premier League.
Yeah, there'll probably still be the touring production of Blood Brothers by then.
Well, I'm very glad that you're happy too. And we thought we'd use the first episode of the What's on Stage podcast in 2025 with me, Sarah Crompton, the critic.
And me, Alex Wood, the editor.
To talk about all the exciting things that are coming up. And there's so much exciting coming up.
It's quite overwhelming. We were trying to draw up lists, and I feel like we're going to let down so many people we haven't recommended their show.
So we're going to do two things. We're dividing this into two parts. So today, New Year's Day, we're going to try to get up to March of the new year. And we will miss things. And for that, we apologise. And there's also a lot of theatre still to be announced.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's some... Later this month, we've got RSC season, which they've said that they're announcing, so we're not revealing too much there. And then some other venues have got their season announcements soon, so that could be very cool.
And Manchester International Festival is yet to announce, which will be exciting. But what we thought we'd do was do up to March, concentrated.
Yes.
And then in tomorrow's podcast, we're going to do all the shows that are coming back in 2025 and the rest of the year.
Yes, the diluted 25. We're splitting it into two parts like the Wicked screenplay writer. We just too much stuff for one episode.
But we're not making you wait quite as long for part two.
No,
not
part two for good. The What's on Stage podcast for good, yeah.
You're going to start us off.
Am I going to start us off?
You're going to start us off with something in January.
Yes, Sarah, you don't know the TV series Inside Number 9 by Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith.
I have watched episodes of it and really, really enjoyed it. Admired it. And my younger son is a huge fan of it. But I'm not a fan. I know that there are people out there who regard the arrival of Inside Number 9 on stage as one of the most exciting things that's happening all year. And I'm not quite that person. But you are close to that person.
Yes, I adore that series. And I have long thought it would make for a great stage production. You've got Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith in every episode taking on different characters, but around them they always have an ensemble of incredible stage and screen talent. So you've got people like Sheridan Smith, you've got people like Philip Glenister, Paul Morrissey, Keeley Hawes, Tamsin Outhwaite.
Wow.
And they all have individual episodes that they star in, and they are 30 minutes long, normally an individual concept that's a bit distorted or weird or whimsical, but always has a twist at the end in the Twilight Zone sort of way. Some of them are very specific to one location, so you think these could make great stage productions. And what they're doing now with Stage/Fright is taking some of the characters that people of the TV series will recognise and add a bit more material as well. So overall, it becomes a bit of old, bit of new, bit of familiar, bit of unfamiliar, and Shearsmith and Pemberton also on stage. So something for the people who have seen the series to admire and continue the legacy of the TV series, but also people who have never experienced it, getting something that should allow them to enjoy the night anyway, even if they don't know the series.
Right.
It's kind of similar, I guess, to the Fawlty Towers stage production that is currently still on in the West End, where you take some of the familiar skits and you bring them into the world of live entertainment. But I think that this might be slightly more innovative in the way that it does that than Fawlty Towers.
Exciting. And I am really looking forward to it. And I'm currently planning to go with you
Yes.
so that you get one person who knows a bit about it and one person who knows a lot about it watching it together.
Yeah.
Hopefully, therefore, being able to reflect the full experience. That's the biggest thing in January as far as I can see. And then February is just like, it's ridiculous. There is so much stuff on in February. I won't be able to go anywhere. I won't be able to do anything. I won't be able to breathe for the amount of theatre coming on.
We've got the WhatsOnStage Awards as well.
And the WhatsOnStage. I was going to say.
It's going to be I'm going to be a walking puddle by the end of it. I'm terrified of that month for many different reasons. But which are the shows that are really getting you excited?
Well, so I'm going to start with the Greeks again, because there are two huge Greek tragedies come back. One is Oedipus at the Old Vic with Rami Malek and Indira Varma, which will be thrilling, co-directed by Matthew Warchus and Hove Schechter, who, of course, I know mainly as a choreographer and who is an extraordinary choreographer with a very distinctive, pulsating style. And I'm so interested to see what he does. And when you look at the cast list, it's got acting chorus and dancing chorus. And it just sounds completely different from Robert Ite's Oedipus that a lot of people saw last year, but B, from most things on the London stage, a reconceived Greek tragedy. So I'm very, very excited about that.
And alongside that
is, same month,
yes,
is Electra, starring Brie Larson and directed by Daniel Fish. And it sounds odd to say that something starring Brie Larson, the thing you're most excited about is the director. But I still maintain that seeing Daniel Fish's Oklahoma on Broadway, I saw it quite late, so I saw it as it reached Broadway, was one of the most thrilling experiences of my theatrical life, because it was such a thoroughgoing rethinking and so much director's theatre at its best, where you could see the detail of his work on it. You could see how long he'd taken to put it on and how thoroughgoing the thinking was on it. And I feel with this that he will bring the same approach, and it will be riveting.
Produced also by Empire Street. So they've had an incredible run of form with some form-busting productions, because they've had Prima Facie with Joe Tacoma, Slave Play. They were the producers that brought that over to the West End. And now I think their production of The Pillow Man with Lily Allen, which I admired, which was pretty solid. And now this, they really are a producing team to watch.
Yeah, and it's also so interesting because it's Anne Carson, one of America's best poets, doing the translation. And Annie B. Parsons is the choreographer, who is legendary in a culty way. I mean, again, so she's done a lot of work with Baryshnikov and people, and she's a fascinating choreographer. So the fact she's involved is very interesting. And Orestes is Patrick Vale, who was Judd in Oklahoma and who is one of the most enigmatic actors. And I feel that everything's there for it to be sensational.
Yeah. Patrick Vale was amazing in Stranger Things, The First Shadow as well, playing a young Matthew Modine. He's joined by Stockard Channing, who's also in it as Clytemnestra.
Yeah.
All in all, like you say, all the ingredients are there for this to be a very juicy fruitcake of a Greek classic.
No. And it is true that it marks one of the many amazing ensemble casts that we're going to see this year. I would say one of the most striking things going through the year ahead is how many brilliant people, young and established, are bringing shows to the stage that you really want to see what they make of it, which slightly takes us on to...
Are we going for the RSC's production of Hamlet by any chance?
We could go for that.
Oh, we could go for another one. Which one were you going to go for?
I was going to go for the Seagull as the Barbican, but let's start with the RSC's production of Hamlet.
Oh, you wanted to go a bit east, I wanted to go north. So Rupert Gould returns to the RSC for the first time in quite a while for a new production of Hamlet, with Luke Thallen in the title role. And podcast fans will know that Nancy Carroll, formerly of this parish, plays Gertrude, and she spoke about the production a few episodes ago. So I would recommend going back to listen to what she has to say about Hamlet. But you hear very, very exciting things.
Without breaking any confidence, I can say, yeah, I'm hearing exciting things. And it's known in this house, actually, as Nancy's Hamlet, which is kind of... which is quite funny, given the fact that the cast is amazing. Luke Thallen has been waiting for this part. I think he and Rupert Gould have been talking about it for a long time. And he is an extraordinary actor. It will be so fascinating to see his Hamlet. But he is surrounded by Jared Harris as Claudius, which again feels like dream casting. Nancy's Gertrude, Elliot Levy as Polonius.
Polonius, yes.
Which feels counterintuitive and clever. Anton Lesser.
Yes, as first player and Ghost.
As Ghost. And Naya Towle as Ophelia, who is someone I've loved for a long time and really looking forward to seeing what she makes of it.
Was she your favourite bit of A View from the Bridge?
She was. I liked her very much opposite Dominic West in that. I thought she was fabulous.
Hopefully that will travel south at some point for Londoners who don't want to risk getting the train north.
The trains. I'm going to brace myself and get on those trains.
As both very fond of the Midlands in our own rights, we have a Warwickshire affiliation anyway, but we should travel further south now to return to the Barbican, as you're about to talk about. Again, probably one of the most loaded productions this year in terms of star power, I'd say.
Well, do you know, when I was thinking about the Seagull at the Barbican, I'd forgotten that it's directed by Thomas Ostermeyer, who, of course, is in himself a star and somebody that everybody wants to see. Did Enemy of the People in 2024, always has a new take, an interesting way into a play. So I'd almost forgotten that, dazzled as I was by the cast, which starts with Cate Blanchett, continues with Tom Burke, then has got Cody Smith-McPhee as Constantine and Emma Corrin as Nina.
I'm really intrigued to see how they balance out the ensemble in that one, because The Seagull is such a malleable play for any director to place the emphasis where they want to, because the roles are so rich. You know, I'd say it's Chekhov's best play. Which is big discussion.
Might do a Chekhov podcast nearer the time.
Could do, because obviously Nina was the emphasis in Jamie Lloyd's production with Emilia Clarke. But here, it's interesting that Blanchett and Burke are the two that seem to be getting the biggest amount of publicity at the moment, when really this could be a Corrin-led production.
Yeah.
And they are obviously one of our most exciting stage talents. They were fantastic in Orlando and Anna X.
Yeah.
So they clearly love the London stage as well, which is great for us.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see them. And it's cast right down to the smallest part. So Jason Watkins is in it as Sorn, I think, and Tanya Reynolds as Masha. So every single role is taken by somebody you want to see playing the role. It's fascinating that Blanchett wants to lead that ensemble. I think because she's got experience of herself running a theatre. I've always had the sense she's quite a team player, and that what excites her about stage work is the idea of everybody pulling together to pull off a play. So, yeah, that's very high on my list of February. But, I mean, you know, there is so much in February, I say again.
I wanted to give a shout out to some new musicals that we can expect. Some of them opening in February, others in March, and actually one in January. We've got Wild Rose, which is going to be opening in Edinburgh, and it's directed by John Tiffany and based on the film of the same name, about a aspiring Scottish country singer who wants to make it big in Nashville. Jessie Buckley was amazing in the film version, so hopefully there's going to be some great work here. Then in February, you've got the musical version of Clueless, which has tunes by Katie Tunstall of Suddenly I See fame. I saw a junket performance that she did where it was just her, a guitar, a loop pedal, doing numbers from the show. And it was so raw and fascinating, an insight into how a composer makes music for a show. And what was really quite lovely is that you get the impression when you get these star composers that swan in make the music for these big budget musicals, what they'll do is they'll sit at the piano for a couple of hours, bash out some tunes, and then hop off and let the musical supervisor and everyone else take care of it. But seeing Cate Tunstall properly jamming out, thinking about how she's telling these stories through these songs, using the loop pedal, not apologising if she gets some notes wrong or some lyrics wrong, it showed how personal an investment there was in the musical itself. So that really shot at my list the moment that I saw her actually doing that.
Yeah, and of course Clueless is a brilliant story and plot. So I can imagine that that collision of the two people is fascinating.
Yeah, Austin at
Yeah,
most
Austin at
contemporary.
high school, yeah.
I remember someone really funny on social saying that Wicked is Clueless if halfway through Cher got taken out of California and just had to report to the president, which is quite amusing. And then the third one, which is a slightly unorthodox musical, is a musical tribute to Edward Scissorhands, just called Scissor Hands, but it's a jukebox show that has tunes by people like Alanis Morissette and Taylor Swift. Big tick for anyone who knows me and my musical taste. So that's opening at Southwark Playhouse in January and produced by Michelle Visage and Lance Bass from NSYNC, which is not names that we expected to say so quickly after Chekhov. So that could be a big...
This podcast is rich in the way it segues from name to name.
So yeah, again, could be a big sleeper hit. Might be a long life ahead for it. It was amazing on the West Coast in America, apparently, so could have a similar result here.
And Southwark, which is an expanding theatre, has got a good reputation with developing new musicals. I mean, Benjamin Button being case in point, which has gone from strength to strength. So
Operation Mincemeat spent some time there.
Operation Mincemeat, yeah. So that's exciting,
yeah.
I think.
Where would you like to go next?
So I'm quite excited about Richard II at the Bridge with Jonathan Bailey. I haven't seen Jonathan Bailey on stage since his turn. Really, it was a turn because it's quite a small part in Marion Elliott's company, where he sang Not Getting Married Today at a speed that you did not believe anybody was capable of singing a song. And then obviously he's gone from strength to strength in Bridgerton, in Wicked, and becoming more and more of a star. And he's part of Vanity Fair's Hollywood issue, which is always a sign that you're really making it in America if they want to include you. Coming back to the stage to do Rich II, directed by Nicholas Heitner. After the Bridge being effectively closed to all plays except Guys and Dolls, which is run there for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's quite exciting. And I think they will offer huge insight into Rich II, which is a tricky play, but it's also a play in which you can really make a mark. So, I mean, I remember seeing David Tennant do it and Eddie Redmayne's done it, you know, so there's a school of very famous actors who have had great success in the play because in a sense, Rich II's about a man who turns a mirror of narcissism on himself and it leads to his tragedy. And it gives an actor a lot to chew on.
It's definitely my favourite Shakespeare history play.
Oh, interesting. Another subject of another podcast.
Yes. So, like you say, whenever you see someone like David Tennant or Ben Whishaw doing it, they always adopt this very high tenor approach to Shakespeare's text. And I'm really intrigued to see if they do that again or if they go for something slightly more masculinized. I'm expecting, judging from Nick Heitner's previous productions like A Midsummer Night's Dream and Julius Caesar, also with Ben Whishaw, but A Midsummer Night's Dream, but there was quite a lot of strong queer interpretation of the text that really worked, and I think that could be really fascinating. If you have a Richard that might be more martial and physical, but also is then undone by his sexual orientation. Just hypothesising about how production could really work well. It could go in a completely different direction. My favourite Jonathan Bailey story was a few weeks ago when I was out in the freezing cold in Greenwich for that Wicked junket.
Yeah.
I arrived probably about an hour early in the middle of like pitch black Greenwich Park, just by the observatory, which it's when it's late at night and there's no lights at all, it's very ominous. And I was just stood there with my camera equipment, and then out of the dark comes this guy in like a jacket wearing his AirPods, and I was like, that's a bit weird. That looked like Jonathan Bailey. Surely he'd be like arriving in like a limo or something, or like an SUV. And it was just him. And he was just like wandering up to the junket that he was the star of.
So
like,
nice.
That's so down to earth. And
Yeah.
I was tempted to go up to him and be like, hi mate, big fan. But I was just like, and then a publicist just found him and like whisked him away as quickly as possible. But I was just like, oh, he's one of us.
Very endearing. And on the subject of much anticipated Shakespeare productions.
Much anticipated.
Much anticipated. There's much ado.
Yes.
Directed by Jamie Lloyd, his second production at Drury Lane, and starring Tom Hiddleston and Hayley Atwell, who feel like very good pairing for a couple of squabbling lovers in the shape of Benedict and Beatrice.
I'd go as far to say as two of our best Shakespearean actors of their generation, of that, that's sort of like early millennial generation that they fit into. Tom Hiddleston was brilliant as Hal in The Hollow Crown, and Hayley Atwell was wonderful in Measure for Measure. When I saw that at the Donmar Warehouse, I thought that was a really
one of the
fantastic,
best Measure for Measures for a long time.
Because they gender flipped it, didn't they? And it just allowed her to do more with a character that's less fun to play with. So that was Josie Rourke's production at the time. But yes, I can't wait to see what they're doing on the theatre or Drury Lane stage. It feels like it's more of a big audience banker than The Tempest, which is currently playing, is. And we spoke to Jamie Lloyd on press night, and we might put this interview out on the podcast
as a bonus.
Yes, soon.
A little bonus episode.
But he said that he's planning to do something that no one would expect with this much ado, which for Jamie Lloyd could mean absolutely anything.
I am personally hoping. I love Jamie Lloyd, and I feel he's done so much to bring classic plays back to life and make them really work for a different audience. I love that in him. As we know, I wasn't absolutely in love with The Tempest, and I didn't feel it worked because I thought they came up with a brilliant concept but then didn't necessarily flesh it out. So what I am hoping for Jamie is that he introduces at least one prop into Much Ado, possibly a ruff, and possibly somebody wears Elizabethan costume, because he's such an intelligent director. I think he can do almost anything. And at the moment, I feel he's slightly doing one thing. Controversially.
He definitely feels smart enough to be someone that knows what his reputation is, and is also audacious enough to pull apart people's expectations as and when he feels like it.
And what's so fascinating about him putting on Shakespeare at Drury Lane is it is such a big ask. So there hasn't been Shakespeare there
since John Gielgud did The Tempest in the 60s,
Yeah, so, and you can see why. It is an epic stage, and it asks of you so much to make it come to life. So I am very intrigued by what they do with Much Ado, and I'm really confident. I feel it's going to be very, very good.
I'm going to quickly self-correct and say it was 1957 that he did it, not 1960s, before anyone calls us up in the comments for that inaccuracy.
More than 60 years, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. It could really work well, because I think Much Ado is actually a play that's similar to Twelfth Night, starts from a place of unrest and sadness and ends in a much more joyful, uplifting place, with a few sort of caveats along the way when you take certain characters like the Don Johns, and it does get to a very dark place, but finds redemption when Much Ado could have been another Romeo and Juliet tragedy, if not for all the plot strands coming together and everyone being saved. So yeah, I know. I think that I'm very optimistic for this one, and given the response to The Tempest, I'm surprised I am as optimistic as I am. But also, like you say, I did admire The Tempest somewhat now that I've seen it. I think it felt like if Frank Herbert had written The Tempest, this is exactly what would have happened. It is essentially the House of Atreides is sent into exile and then engineers its way back into power.
Which is the brilliant bit, to sort of conceive it in that way that gives it a modern touch point. And I thought that was very strong in it. Just a lot of the rest I didn't so much like. But yeah, it'd be great.
Well, one we haven't mentioned yet is Chris Bush's Otherland at the Almeida, directed by Anne Yee, who choreographed and co-directed the wonderful production of Next to Normal.
Which we loved.
Which we loved.
Both loved.
Continue to love. I think Chris is one of the most exciting playwrights. She was brilliant with Standing at the Sky's Edge. That is perhaps one of the most successful musicals grounded in a community since maybe like Billy Elliot, I'd go as far as to say. And this feels like a very personal play about a relationship that is, comes up against a complete transformation. And the cast includes, Jay Danuka, Fiz Sinclair, and the Almeida always has a very strong track record when it comes to new writing, as we will be discussing in the next episode as well.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about that. I'm also booking my ticket for Alterations at the National Theatre, which is not a new play, though it has been a bit adapted. It's a revival of a play by Michael Abensets, who was a Black British playwright in the 60s, whose work has been lost, essentially. He was an incredible pioneer, both on TV and on stage. And in the way of these things has been forgotten. I, over Christmas, watched Blitz, the Steve McQueen film, which I was hugely impressed by. And one of the ways in which it is so interesting is that it does draw attention to the long history of Black Britons. And then there's a funny sense in which it just got forgotten at some point. And, a new generation of writers and so on emerged. But all those pioneers in the 50s and 60s and just got lost, really. And there's a bit of that going on at the moment. Lonely Londoners is coming back to the Kiln, and that's another play, another set of stories about the immediate post-Windrush generation that's been lost. So I'm really, really excited to see this play, and I'm particularly thrilled that it's being directed by Lynette Linton, who we both share huge admiration for, and whose insight and delicacy as director is always fascinating.
On the subject of insight and revivals, a play that will probably become a modern classic is Dennis Kelly's solo show, Girls and Boys, which is having its first revival and first staging outside of London, with Aisling Loftus taking on the lead role. It's a play we won't reveal too much about for anyone who hasn't seen it. You can't reveal.
It's one of those plays, just to draw back the curtain a bit, where the press are actually asked not to reveal the plot. So it's like Me, You, Bum Bum Train. You just can't say anything about it.
Except that it's brilliant.
And amazing.
Kerry Mulligan did it originally, but I think it will become one of those plays that the great performers of their time take on in a Shirley Valentine sort of way, but in a much more flooring sort of sense in terms of the subject matter that you're going after. So
Aisling Loftus is having go at it.
Yes.
And I think will be wonderful. Actress I love and feel I don't see enough of. So that will be great in Nottingham, which is having a good run and has a good year coming up.
Such a good run.
Which we might talk about a bit next episode.
Yeah, we could. They've got a fair few WhatsOnStage Award nominations between Minority Report, Raisin in the Sun, Dear Evan Hansen,
James Graham's Punch.
And Punch, yes.
Which actually I will say now is coming to the Young Vic in March. So it gets another life. That's meant to be tomorrow's episode.
We're trailing the next episode.
But nevertheless, I'm going to mention it now. And also going to mention something else very exciting in March, which is Rhinoceros at the Almeida UNESCO. Now, you said in a previous podcast that this is your favourite, or one of your favourite plays, which took me aback because it's a play I know very little about.
Yes. Ionesco's play about a small village where slowly but surely all the townspeople start transforming into rhinoceroses, and it's quite on the nose or on the tusk parable about fascism and the way in which people go along with the majority. Something that seems outlandish and outspoken gradually becomes normalised, feels very relevant to the present day, and the casting is also excellent.
Yeah, it stars Sophie Dirisu, who is the man I most want to see as James Bond. I know that this is an ongoing discussion that will dominate 2025, just as it dominated 2024. Who is the next James Bond? And I know at some many, many levels it's uninteresting, but I adore him, and I think he is so charismatic and so powerful. he'd be a great Bond, but he'll also be great in this, and thrilling to see him on stage again. He's been doing Gangs of London and movies, he hasn't been on stage for quite a long time. And there's a lot of that sense in 2025 of people coming back to stage, which is one of the most encouraging patterns that's emerged in theatre in the last few years, where you don't have to make a choice between doing brilliant film work and doing brilliant stage work. You can do both. And I love that. I think it's fabulous.
My prediction to round off this episode is that this time next year, we still won't know who the next James Bond is. I'm calling it. I think Barbara Broccoli is going to pull the brakes for a bit longer.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think that this whole palaver with Amazon that seems to be going on, where they seem to be butting heads, and Amazon seem to have labelled James Bond as content, and she has been very angry about that. I think she'll hold fire until the landscape feels a bit more Bond friendly.
Yeah.
And the studio starts to play ball with her Aston Martin project rather than a Ford Focus content project.
Hooray for Barbara Broccoli. And she can take as long as she wants choosing the next James Bond, as long as she casts Soapy. That's my conclusion to the end of the episode.
Well, on that note, and hooray for Barbara Broccoli and the Broccoli family full stop, it's a goodbye from me, Alex Wood.
And a goodbye from me, Sarah Crompton.
Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you can. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the What's on Stage podcast, where we'll be continuing this kaleidoscopic journey through 2025. For now, have a lovely rest of your day.